one-minute round questioning with Mr. Spangeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister Goodale, Deputy Minister Brown. Thank you both for being here. I wonder if I can take the opportunity of going first in my questioning to ask a couple of stage-setting questions. Another committee I serve on is the Standing Committee on National Defense, and that committee, in the context of a review of North American aerial readiness, received testimony that the single biggest threat to Canada is domestic terrorism. And I'm wondering, drawing on the 2016 reports that I've read with interest on the terrorist threat to Canada, if you could tell the committee whether or to what extent you agree with that, if that's too simple a conclusion from your perspective, if the threat is more multifaceted than that.
The threat is certainly multifaceted, and it comes in many ways. But identifying the threat of terrorism, and in particular the inspired lone wolf, I think is identifying one of the key areas upon which we need to concentrate our efforts. The threat report that was published in the summer indicated a number of things that seem to be new or evolving in the structure of threats that are affecting Canada. One of those is the advent of new technology that is always changing all the time. Another is actually the gender makeup of some of the threats that we deal with, and an increasing presence of women in the matrix. But still, at the moment, and Director Colomb would be able to give you a good deal of texture with respect to this analysis. One of our key concerns are those lone wolves that are on the internet or somehow get inspired by Al Qaeda or Daesh and get on a path to violent behavior. That's why we have a particular focus on the counter-radicalization initiative to try to put ourselves in a position to identify that risk in advance and, to the extent you can, head it off.
Thank you for that. I'm wondering, just to add briefly to that, if you could tell the committee generally, because I'm assuming there's classification levels involved here, the extent to which the threat level varies with the intensity of commitments of our armed forces abroad in other missions, and whether it's military missions, peacekeeping missions, other exercises in the Middle East and Central Asia. In other words, to put it in very simple terms, does the threat increase the more we do abroad?
Well, obviously, I need to be careful in answering that question because, as you say, classified information is involved. But one of our leading priorities is to make sure that when Canadians are in harm's way, that they are properly protected to the maximum extent possible.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Mr. The second line of questioning draws on a byline in the 2016 report on the terrorist threat to Canada, and it talks about building a safe and resilient Canada. And my colleagues will take you into the details of the mechanisms that you're proposing in the National Security Framework. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of Canadian society with respect to good security and good safety. What I'm particularly interested in is how Canadians perceive security in 2016, national security, and what their role is. I mean, the fact that you itemized consultations as a very important part of our commitment will bring Canadian society into the discussion. What is the role of Canadian society in making us resilient, not only in the prevention of attacks, but also socially resilient? And if that's the right path to go down, how important are relationships, not just between communities and government, but between communities with respect to counter-radicalization and tackling the misperceptions and distortions that are embedded in the term terrorism?
Oh, that's not only important in terms of our national security, it's an instinctive part of the character of Canadians, I think, to want to build that sense of cohesion. We're a country that is extraordinarily diverse. I think it was the Aga Khan who said that Canada is the finest example of pluralism the world has ever seen. And that's a great compliment, and obviously he is an honorary citizen of this country, and we take that compliment very sincerely and gratefully. But in that diversity, you constantly have to work at social cohesion. And that involves reaching out to each other and understanding one another, trying very hard to build bridges with each other. And in the kind of country we have and the kind of history we have, we're held together not so much by the force of law or the force of arms, but by our common will. We're a successful country because we want to, not because we have to. And you have to keep promoting that sense of common cause and understanding and outreach. This consultation is intended for two purposes. To let Canadians have their say, and they've wanted to have their say for a long time, and this is the first time in history that they're going to get it, so they're participating in the process, but also by listening to the conversation, whether it's at this committee table or online or in the other rooms in which the consultation is taking place, hopefully will elevate the level of understanding about what national security means, what the framework is, what the threat level is, and reinforce the point, too, that fundamentally we are a safe and peaceful country. And we need to make sure we keep it that way. But Canada is in a very privileged position in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll leave it there. Delegate the rest of the time to the next level.